Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Supplementary Videos. My name is Kasanis. Guys, in this and the next several videos, we're going to be taking a look at Unity's UI. All right, let's get started. Okay, guys, we're going to start off right away by taking a look at a couple of container objects. And these container objects basically allow you to organize your UI elements on the screen. The backbone of this entire system is the canvas, the UI canvas. And all objects that are added to a scene need any UI objects that are added to a scene need to be added to a canvas. Let's take a look at how we create a canvas manually, and then we'll discuss how some of these canvases can be built otherwise. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Game Object. I'm going to scroll down until I find UI, and I'm going to look for the Canvas option, which is right here. When I click on the Canvas option, right away you can see that I've created this brand new canvas, and let's rename it right away to let's call it our main canvas. It doesn't really matter what we call it here. Now, you'll note that nothing really changed in the scene here. My camera didn't move. I don't see anything else kind of in the scene at all. So nothing's really changed here. And the interesting thing about the canvas, unlike other elements that you are going to add, other objects you're going to add to your scene, the canvas is massive. If I if I click on the canvas over here and I hover over my scene and I hit the F button, it's automatically going to focus on the entirety of the canvas. Now, this canvas size is going to change depending on how my display settings are set up over here. However, you can see that I've zoomed out away from the main camera, the global light. There are little tiny things in the corner down here. The canvas itself is this massive area, and this large area allows us to build pixel for pixel locations within this area. So when we add a UI element, it's going to be actual size. So a couple things we're going to take a look at right away. The canvas itself is here in the inspector. I've selected it over here. It's over here in the inspector. A couple things we'll note right away that down here in my game view, I'm currently looking at it in free aspect. Depending on which aspect I actually choose, the canvas itself is going to resize with the current settings I have. This canvas that I've simply added right now is going to resize. If I change to a 16 by 9, you can see how this canvas adjusted there. If I change this to a, let's see, I don't know, 16 by 10, watch how it adjusts. Boom, you can see how it adjusts. So the actual aspect ratio changes and it automatically adjusts how the canvas appears on our screen. I'm just going to simply put it back in free aspect for now. Okay, great. Let's actually take a look at the main canvas in the hierarchy, and we'll take a look at the components that are added to the canvas. So unlike other elements that we've taken a look at, other assets we've taken a look at, this object, the canvas itself, doesn't have a transform node. Instead, it has what's called a rect transform node. And the rect transform node operates very similarly to the transform node, allowing us to position the canvas in space, allowing us to manipulate the camera and the canvas in some way. It's got a couple other assets here, a couple other things we can adjust: the anchors, the pivot, the rotation, and the scale. Those are typical, but the anchors and the pivot are brand new. You'll notice right now that currently all of these are grayed out. I can't actually adjust this canvas in its current state. We'll talk about that in just one second. Let's go down and take a look at the element, or this extra component that we've got added right here, the canvas component. This is really what makes this object into a canvas. We have the render mode, pixel perfect, sort order, and target display, additional shader channels, etc. as well. We're going to take a look at a couple of these right now. First of all, the render mode is a kind of an important one here. It's currently set and automatically comes in by default as a screen space overlay. If I click on the drop down menu, you can see I have three options in total. I have the screen space overlay, I have the screen space camera, and I have the world space canvas. With screen space overlay, the screen itself, the actual UI itself, is going to be overlaid over the entirety of the screen. If I choose screen space camera, when I click on it, you'll see there's an additional option right here right now, render camera. The screen space camera will only appear under a specified camera. So if I have multiple cameras in my scene, currently I only have the main camera, but if I had multiple cameras in my scene, or if I had multiple cameras in my scene and I wanted this particular UI to only show when I had a certain camera selected, I would choose screen space camera and I would add the appropriate camera here, and then whenever that camera was up, the particular UI would show up. The last option is the world space UI. or the world space canvas. The world space canvas, if I click on it, you'll notice right away that I can now adjust my rect transform. The world space canvas allows us to place a canvas in the world. And you might be saying, well, why would I want to do that? Let's say that you had a chest or a treasure chest, whatever that you've included in your game. And whenever the character walks up or the player walks up to the treasure chest, a menu pops up that says, open or smash or whatever you want it to say, and gave the player different options. You would use a world space camera to attach the canvas itself to that object. So whenever the player walked up close, the canvas would pop up. It would appear within world space. Instead of being something that takes over the entirety of your screen, it would appear within world space and be floating next to it. You've seen this in other games where you walk up and it says, hit E to interact and allows you to interact. So that is a world space canvas. So again, there's going to be a particular event camera possibly that it's associated with, etc. We'll take a look at most of these later on in future videos. For now, we're really going to kind of focus on this screen space overlay. It's, like I said, the default one. It's one that you'll probably use the most often. So let's talk about the different options within this particular overlay. So right below the screen space overlay or the render mode option, we have Pixel Perfect. And Pixel Perfect, when turned on, enforces any of the assets you add to your UI, any of your UI elements, to be aligned with the pixel locations on your screen. This prevents any straight lines from being aliased, so you won't kind of get that fuzzy effect. All your lines will be nice and crisp because they're falling directly along pixel locations. Below that is the sort order, and the sort order determines the order in which the canvases are rendered. You can put any kind of value within here. The lower the value of the sort order, that particular canvas will be rendered first. So it'll render it in numerical order with the zeroth or the lowest number rendered first and the highest number rendered last. That means that as your canvases are rendered, they'll be rendered one at a time and they'll be rendered on top of each other. So you can kind of end up with a mishmash of canvases. If you have multiple canvases, you can have a mismatch of canvases and you might not see some information depending on how you've set up that particular order. You might want to turn it on and off so that the certain canvases are showing at a particular time. Whatever you're going to do, this just determines which order the canvases are rendered in, with the lowest number rendering first and the highest number rendering last. Below that is the target display, and the target display allows you to choose a particular location particular display in which this UI is going to be rendered. So let's say you have a system that has multiple screens, some kind of handheld console, whatever that has multiple screens, or you have multiple monitors for your own system. You can choose a display to which you're going to render this particular UI. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other options down here. We're not really going to be too interested in some of this stuff. We don't really want to adjust it. You can leave it exactly as it is for now. The canvas scaler, we already looked at, as we adjust the size of the canvas, things are going to be resized. I could set this up so that I've got a different screen resolution or whatever, and it's going to automatically change or leave the UI scale mode depending on what you've got. We have constant pixel size, meaning that they're always the same, but you can see we have a couple of choices here. Scale with screen size, so as the screen size changes, the actual elements also adjust and become larger. Constant physical size, meaning that they never ever change. Whatever size you've created your elements in or your assets in, they're going to remain that size. Scale factor, oops, I just shut that down. Let me open that back up. Oop. The scale factor is a multiplication, so you make them larger or smaller, etc. All right, let's take a look at the graphics raycaster. Again, this is probably something that we are going to ignore for now unless you actually require it. It's going to suggest that with the raycaster itself, it allows us to shoot. We haven't actually covered this in any way yet, but basically whenever we click or do something to the screen, we can shoot a ray towards the screen. It finds the location in space where that ray hits and then determines whether or not you've clicked on something, for example. You can set up so that the anything that's kind of backwards and ignore reversed, blocking objects, something that's actually going to physically block the raycast from occurring, things like that can be set up here. We don't have to worry about this a whole lot right now unless we look into very specific things, which maybe we'll do at a later time. So for now, that is how a canvas basically works. Something else that you may have noticed when we added our main canvas is, besides the main canvas, we had this other asset that showed up, this event system that showed up. And the event system is automatically added whenever you add the canvas, the UI system. What it basically is it's going to allow us to set up our UI elements to do something. So you can see here left click, middle click, etc. So all of these things here are going to assign an event that occurs whenever we do something on the screen. We'll talk about this much more when we move into the idea of coding UI elements. But for now, just know that the event system is automatically created whenever you add in a brand new canvas. Okay, let's try adding ourselves a new UI asset. I'm going to go up to Game Object. Once again, I'm going to scroll down to UI, and I'm going to pick for now. Let's pick image for now. So I'm just going to add myself a brand new image, and you can see that it is smart enough to automatically add the image to that canvas. So let's go in here and we're just going to rename this to my image for now. Doesn't really matter what we call it. So we're going to call it my image. And we're going to get into images a little bit later on. Just for now, let's take a look really quickly. I'm only adding it so you can see how it works in space. And let's actually add in a brand new sprite in here. Boom. Where's my here it is, sorry. My source image. I'm going to add in a brand new source image. I've actually got a couple things here. I'm just going to add this night head here. We'll talk about images and how they work in a future video when we go over all the components. For now, I'm just adding it so you can actually see it within space, and we can talk about a few other important concepts associated with the UI elements in general. Okay, so I've added myself this brand new my image. It's just a sprite that I put into the UI. It's now associated with the canvas. And let's take a look at a couple of things. So right now, just like the canvas, we have a rect transform up here. This rect transform has a few different options, a couple things that are now immediately available to us. Again, we can see right away that we can adjust the position up the top. We can adjust how wide or how small it is, how wide or how tall it is. We've got something here that's because anchors, and we have the pivot point. So let's take a look at what these ones down here. I mean, right away we can see if we just adjust this, I set this to 0, 0. I've now centered out my asset. So the rect transform works exactly like it would if you were setting up any other element. You can adjust its position within the space, the screen space, based on this transform position right here, this rect transform position. The height and width is adjustable. I can either utilize the object down here, and I can adjust this however I want. And as you can see, the numbers are changing over here as I do so. Let's Control Z that. It's really important to note that when I put this in, it didn't come out looking exactly the way I thought it should look. It was a little bit stretched and a little bit wonky. Whenever you drag it in, it kind of made a square for us, available size. You're going to need to adjust your image to look like however you want to look, how it looks in your actual image that you created elsewhere. Okay, so that's the height and the width. Below that is the anchors. And the anchors themselves allow us to determine what this object is attached to. So let me give you a quick example here. If I adjust my game space, you can see how I'm adjusting my game space, and as I move this around, my canvas is scaling appropriately as I move the actual game space around. You can see that. And the UI element that I added, this image, is remaining locked in space. It's remaining locked to the it's it's remaining locked to the center of the screen. Okay, let me just adjust this again. So I'm gonna put this back at 0, 0. Okay, it's remaining locked there. Now it'll remain locked. You can see how it's remaining locked to the center of the screen. All right, it's not moving in any way regardless of how I actually adjust this screen space. All right, it's always staying centered within our canvas. What that is associated with is our anchor points. So depending on where our anchor points are located, this object will adjust accordingly. So let's say I want to anchor this in the upper left-hand corner in here. I can either go ahead and I can change the values in here. So let's say I set my x is equal to 0 and my y is equal to 0 as well. Watch what happens up here to my values. My y is equal to 0. So these points have now adjusted in space. All right, if I set this to 0 and I set this to 0, these kind of arrows that I'm seeing down here have adjusted in space. Our object is now locked to that corner. So if I move this around now, you can see that it's no longer staying in the center of my screen. It is staying locked a particular distance from this anchor point. In fact, watch as I adjust this value, you can see that the X and the Y positions are remaining constant at 336 and 194, regardless of where I place this. Okay, the pivot point is the central location here. Again, I can determine exactly how I want our pivot. So if I set these both to 0, I'm now pivoting around this corner, so rotations will occur around there. If I put this at 0.5 and 0.5, like it came in by default, I now have my pivot point in the middle. So if I rotate this object, it'll rotate around this point. If I want to rotate around this upper corner, I can reset my X to 1. So it has a value of 0 and 1, and my Y to 1, and now I'm pivoting around this point. So all my rotations will occur around the pivot point. 0.5, I'll put this back how it was, and 0.5. Okay, so you can very, very quickly adjust these values. Now, you might have noticed something else as I was adjusting these values, that this image up here in the upper left-hand corner of my inspector has changed. It used to look like kind of a crosshair, and now it looks like this. Let me put these all back to 0.5 and 0.5. And again, if you're watching that upper left-hand corner, you're going to see that that value is moving around. This object is moving around. This change is indicating exactly where our object, and let me just reset this 0 and 0, exactly where our object is going to be pivoting around or attached to. So both the anchor and the pivot points are adjusted by this here. Now, or are shown right here. Now, this is actually a button. If I click on this crosshair looking thing, this will automatically pop up. This extra window will automatically pop up. And it has a bunch of different settings that you can set. If I want to adjust to my anchor points, I want to adjust it to my upper left-hand corner. If I click on this one in the upper left-hand corner, watch what happens over here in the middle of my screen. When I click on it, boom, my anchor points automatically moved over there. So these are kind of default settings that you can utilize. Okay, there's a couple of options. If you also hold Shift and Alt, you can also adjust the pivot point and with Shift, and Alt will actually adjust the position of this object as well. So let's say I hold my Shift and my Alt. You'll note that everything in here changed. My options changed. It's suggesting now that if I click in this upper left-hand corner like it is, if I click on this, it's going to automatically adjust my anchor points up here. It's going to automatically adjust my pivot point up here, and it's going to automatically move my object up here as well. So if I click on this, you can see everything has adjusted over there. Let's say I'm like, oh, no, I don't like that. I actually wanted it in my lower left-hand corner, and I hold Shift and I hold Alt, and I click this one at the bottom. It'll automatically shift down to that location. Okay, great. A couple other things we'll note is that we have some stretch options here. So if I wanted this object to be stretched across the entirety of the screen, I can click like this, and you can see now my anchor points have adjusted. If I hold Shift and Alt, boom, like that, I have now shifted the entire thing so that my anchor points have shifted, the object is shifted, my pivot point is now in the center, and the entire thing is stretched across my screen. Regardless of how I move this around, that object will always stretch across the screen. You might use something like this if you want to ensure that your panels remained in the bottom, center bottom, and you wanted them to get larger or smaller, depending on the screen size. You might use something like this to be able to do that kind of stuff. Okay, let me just shift everything back, Shift, Alt, bam, back into the center. It has now still scaled up, unfortunately. Sorry, it's still stretched out, unfortunately. I'd have to readjust this here so my height and my width remained unadjusted. I'd have to actually go through if I wanted to and adjust this in space, and then adjust this back to 0 if I want it to be centered. Okay, great. Let's take a look at another container object that you could use to help you kind of set up the things the way you want them set up. I want to move on to the idea of the panel. And the panel is just basically another collector object or another object, a container object that allows you to contain elements. So we're going to come back to the image. Don't worry. We're going to do a lot more with this image in a later video. For now, I just want to go over the really kind of basic stuff that's associated with most assets within the UI system. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to go up here to Game Object. And once again, I'm going to go to UI, and I'm going to find this option for Panel. And I'm going to click Panel. And right away, we can see this object automatically filled our screen. And the panel can be used for a number of different things. First of all, it's got a couple of, by default, it's got a couple of options. Let's just change it to My Panel. My Panel. I just keep calling everything something stupid. I really do have to think about this a little more carefully before I start these. Anyway, My Panel has been added to the screen, and you can see that right away a couple of options have occurred by default. First of all, our anchors are in the corners. As I adjust This object, you can see that it's automatically got the stretch mode on, so the panel itself is remaining stretched across the entirety of the scene at all times. If we take a look at the panel itself, we have a canvas renderer here as an additional asset, additional component. We have an image associated with it. So currently right now we have this default background image, which is this kind of gray stuff here. The color is turned down, so the alpha is turned down a bit, which is why it's kind of a little bit opaque. Okay, I can adjust this if I want it to be I want it to be completely opaque, I can turn it all the way up. If I want it to be transparent, I can turn it all the way down. So basically, we have an image that is stacked on top of, just like my other image over here, my image that we added before, we have an image that's stacked on top of this actual panel. We have a couple of other options that we'll take a look at later on. We don't really care right now. I think one of the most important things is right here, whether or not this is a raycast target. If it's a raycast target, like we already discussed, that means that it has the ability to stop and block rays that come from your mouse. So if you're clicking on something, then it has the opportunity to kind of like stop any rays from going past the panel itself. So what is the panel for? So basically the panel allows us to, or what I use it for, it can be used for many things. You could use it to create yourself a pop-up window. You could use it for multiple things. What I like to use it for is really as a container object to allow me to adjust where my assets are located within my canvas. So to do this, I'm going to, instead of having it set up this way with main canvas up here, my image as a child and my panel as a child, I'm going to grab my image and I'm going to drag it and I'm going to drop it on my panel. And as soon as I do so, you can see that now my image is a child of my panel. So if I move my panel around, my image itself is going to adjust and stay with my panel as I move it about. So why would I want to do this? Well, let's say that I was setting up a complex UI system where in one area I have my character's health, and the other area I have my character's inventory, and then somewhere else I've got my character's weapons and how much ammo it has, whatever. I'm adding all these different UI elements to my screen, and I'm constantly making these adjustments. If you've gone through and done your design properly, you probably don't have to do this as much. But if you're kind of a seat of your pants kind of person, you're just building your UI as you go, you haven't gone through the design process, which I'm not recommending, but you haven't done it. Having everything kind of located in a panel that you call, instead of my panel, you might call this character health panel or something like that. You can add all of the elements associated with your character's health to the panel, and that panel can then be adjusted and moved about. Now, if we see what we've got here, we already talked about how the panel itself is automatically adjusting according to the size because it's got stretch currently on. I don't have to have that stretch on. Instead, I could actually reduce my panel size. So by clicking again on this button and hitting Shift and Alt and taking off this thing, I'm just going to center this, bam, like this. By taking off the stretch, now I have the ability to adjust where my object is located within space. And currently it's locked into the center. Okay, if I don't want this, I can adjust this any way I want. So let's say I instead wanted this to occur, be locked into this upper left-hand corner. I'm going to Shift Alt, click on this, Shift Alt, bam, click over there, and everything's shifted over. Okay, now as I adjust the size of my screen, you can see that panel is locked into that corner. And because I turn the stretch off, it's no longer stretching along with the entirety of the screen. So I could then adjust my image, which is now a child of my panel. I can adjust this image to fall in the place within the panel that I want it. So I could lock, for example, the image of, let's say, my character's health face. I could lock that into the upper right-hand corner of the panel itself. So again, with my image selected, Shift and Alt, clicking this button, Shift and Alt, and then clicking the upper right hand like this, I have adjusted within space, I have adjusted my image to be in the upper right hand corner of the panel. You'll note it's not of the canvas anymore. So these anchor presets are associated with the asset that this is parented to. In this particular case, I've got it parented to the panel, so that's why it's located there. And as I adjust the size of the screen like this, you can see that everything's locked in place. I can change the size of my panel. Let's say I wanted to make this much smaller, so I'm going to change the height of my panel. So instead of it being a 388, I'm going to make it a 200. Okay, there we go. I have a smaller panel now. And as I move this about in space, again, it's going to adjust accordingly. Now, I don't have to If I don't want to leave this image here, I could scrub down with my panel selected. I could scrub down. I could change this source image to anything I want. I could even turn it off if I want to. I don't have to have it there. I can adjust the alpha. So if I adjust the alpha all the way down like this, then you can see the panel itself disappears, but my UI asset remains visible. Any of its children remain visible accordingly. Now, why I've done this and why I like to do this, I like to create on my panels, I like to create the layout of that particular node, whatever I'm creating here, my health panel, my weapons panel, whatever. I like to do all my setups within the panel itself. So I get my panel set up the way I like it. And then afterwards, if I decide I want to move it, but I like the layout of the panel itself, but I want to move this so it's locked somewhere else. Let's say I decide, oh no, I really wanted this down here I want my panel locked down here in the lower right-hand corner, then I can simply adjust the entirety of that panel by going into my panel, again, clicking Shift Alt, and then coming down, boom, and locking it in place down here. So by setting up the layout like you like within the panel itself, you can adjust the panels any way you want. You can slide them around, you can put them wherever you'd like without having to redo the layout of the particular information you're trying to give your player. If I was trying to give this health and I wanted to include in here potions I had available or whatever I wanted to include in here, that would remain set up appropriately and I could still adjust those panels the way I like. Okay, just a couple more things I want to look at quickly here. The panel itself, you can have as many panels as you want. Right now I have a single panel. The size of the panel doesn't really matter. It's not going to have any effect on the actual assets you have associated with your panel. So let's say I wanted to create a panel for my health and I want to create a dialogue panel. I wanted to have my health panel up here in the upper left-hand corner, and I wanted to have my dialogue panel stretched across the entire bottom here, and words would appear whenever my character's talking or whatever. I'm going to adjust first of all. I'm going to go to my image. I'm going to adjust by clicking Shift and Alt, and I'm going to put my asset, my image in the upper left-hand corner. And then I'm going to lock my panel again into the upper left-hand corner as well. Now, the size of this panel, like I mentioned, doesn't really matter. I can leave it this size if I want um, to use it as kind of a guide if I want to. I can shrink it down so and you'll note here as I shrink it down, it didn't actually change the image itself. It doesn't matter where that image is located at all. Actually, this is scaled up and this should be scaled down to 1. There we go. So we're seeing it properly. This doesn't really matter. The panel itself, the size of the panel itself in this particular case doesn't really matter. All of your images, etc., will just remain in place based on how they are locked to the individual panel. So let's say I wanted to include a new panel in here. I'm going to go to Game Object. I'm going to go to UI. I'm going to go to Panel. And boom, I automatically add one. And let's call this, let's say it's our dialogue panel. So our dialogue panel. I don't want to stretch across the entirety. I only want to stretch across the bottom down here. So I'm going to click. I'm going to Shift Alt. I'm going to choose stretched across the bottom like that. And I'm going to adjust the size so that it's just, let's say 200 pixels tall so that my dialogue will appear here. Now, watch what happens when I hit play. Everything is kind of locked in place right now, and you'll note how different this looks from how it looked. I'm going to stop this. How different it looked from down here. Because this is set up with free aspect ratio, as the canvas size increases from whatever size this is right here to the full size of my screen, the assets that are on the canvas adjust as well. So right now it looks like, wow, my dialogue is really, really big and my character's face is really close to the dialogue system. But as soon as I hit play here, once again, if we take a look at this, as soon as I hit play, you can see how everything is adjusted according to the size of my screen. That's super, super important. It's really important. A lot of people, when they first start, they'll come in and they'll start to place assets on their canvas. They'll look at it down here in their little window and be like, oh yeah, and they'll forget completely about the anchor points. They'll forget completely about all the things I just talked about, and instead they'll just kind of physically move it. Like if I grab my image and I move it about and I move it down here, let's say I just adjust it like this, you'll note that as I adjust it, it's changing up here, right? All these values up here are changing. When I hit play, now let's say I want it to be, let's say, I want to put this in the middle of the screen. So I'm looking at it like this. A lot of students do this. Like, okay, there, that's right in the middle. That's exactly where I want it. Then when they hit play, they can't figure out why is it up here when I put it in the middle of the screen. Guys, this is super important. Super important. If you want something to be located in a specific location, it is based on your anchors and your pivot points, not on its location down here within this game scene, right? Like if let's say I wanted like kind of a little buffer, 25 by minus 25. I wanted a little buffer up here in the corner so it wasn't kind of pinched in. When I hit play now, you'll see that it is up in the upper left-hand corner. It's 25 away, 25 away. I've kind of got that little buffer around there, but it looks completely different. That's one of the biggest mistakes that students make when they first start playing with UI, not understanding how the anchor points and the pivot points and the stuff I just went over, how exactly that works. All right, it's really important to go through and adjust everything and look at it in these different ways. All right. It's not about where it's physically located within your game screen in a little window down here. It's 100% about where it's located within real space of the canvas itself or the panel or whatever you have it associated with. That's where it's going to be overall. All right, guys. So that is the basics of the canvas and the panel, the basics of UI. All the other elements we're going to take a look at will have similar ideas to what we just saw here, as far as placement, anchors, and all that kind of stuff, just like this image did. What we're going to do in the next video, we're going to take a look at several of the assets, several of the assets you can create within the UI system. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, let me know down below with a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down is perfectly fine. I'm really creating these for my students as supplementary videos to their lecture notes and the lecture they have. So I'm hoping people out there are getting something out of this as well. All right, guys. Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below. And if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.